Well, good day, everyone, and happy St. Patrick's Day to all who are interested. And for those of you who are not, well, still, happy St. Patrick's Day to you as well. This is Doug Fagan, your volunteer reader, coming to you today from the studios of the Audible Local Ledger here in Deer Crossing in Mashpee, Massachusetts. We're going to take a look at today's reading of the Tuesday, March 17th, St. Patrick's Day edition of the Cape Cod Times. And as we venture into that, we'll begin with the weather. And speaking of the weather, how about those brutal winds last night? I heard a neighbor's chainsaw going first thing this morning, so I'm assuming a tree came down there, but I couldn't see it. So anyhow, it must have happened, but brutal wind. It kept me up for about an hour and a half last night from 4 to 5:30. All right, that aside, let's take a look at the weather. I looked at the radar this morning, and there are storms, rain all the way from Miami, Florida, completely up the East Coast to New England. However, they are offshore, so that's a good thing. Taking a look at today, we're going to have a shower in the morning, which we pretty much already had, and then mostly sunny and breezy thereafter. We're going to have a high today in the mid-40s at 45 degrees. Tonight's going to get colder again. There is a cold front for the next several days. This week is not looking that great altogether, but tonight we're going to have an all-overnight low of 22 degrees. Mostly cloudy and much colder. Full moon tonight. Probably won't be able to see it, though. Tomorrow, we're going to be 8 degrees colder than we are today at 37 degrees, partly sunny, which will help, and an overnight low of 25. Thursday, intervals of clouds and sunshine, but no rain, high of 42. Friday, this is our better day, folks, if you're going to be out and about. 48 degrees and mostly sunny all day, and overnight low gets back up above freezing again to 38 degrees. And then Saturday, a high of 49, mostly cloudy, a little rain in the afternoon, and overnight low of 29. So if you're going out and about, probably Wednesday, tomorrow, Thursday, or Friday. Any of those 3 days are going to be okay because we're going to have partial to mostly sunny and no rain. So Friday and Saturday, well, maybe you might want to stay in if you're not going out and just watch NCAA March Madness basketball. All right, how about some temperatures along the Cape? Give you some highs here as we go first along the South Shore. Highs today in Plymouth and Wareham are going to be 46 degrees, 45 in Buzzards Bay. Crossing the bridge into Sandwich in the Bourne area, 46 is a high there. Same with Mashpee and Barnstable, 44 in Falmouth, 45 in Hyannis. Moving out midway at the Cape, 44 at Dennis, and at the elbow of the Cape, 46 in Chatham as a high. Same in Brewster, Eastham, Truro, and Provincetown is a little bit cooler at 44 degrees as a high temperature today. I wouldn't think about swimming in Cape Cod Bay today, but if you decide to do so, the water temperature is 37, so wear that wetsuit, preferably not a black one, so you're not disguised as a seal, although the sharks have yet to reappear as the water's pretty cold right now. Water temperature 37 degrees, wave heights 2 to 4 feet, wind direction west-southwest 12 to 25 knots, so it's still breezy out there. Looking at the islands, out at Martha's Vineyard, we have a high at Oak Bluffs and Edgartown today of between 44 and 45 degrees, mostly rain this afternoon. Early this morning and then clearing this afternoon. Out at Nantucket, Secaucet has a high of 46 degrees today, the same at Nantucket Village. Same weather, rain in the morning and a clearing in the afternoon. Nantucket Sound water temperature starting to get a little warmer today than the bay. It's 5 degrees warmer at Nantucket Sound at 42 degrees as the water temp there. Wave heights 8 to 12 feet and the wind direction west-southwest 20 to 30 knots. Overnight we had gusts in excess of 60 miles per hour. So that was not necessarily fun, and I hope, matter of fact, it's a bit scary, so I hope none of you suffered any wind damage. All right, friends, that's it for a look at your weather today, and just a reminder, if you want to go out and about, your best days to do that will be tomorrow, Thursday and Friday, especially Friday with a high of 48 degrees and mostly sun. All right, let's move on now to see what articles we may find of local or regional interest on page 1 of today's Tuesday, March 17th, St. Patrick's Day edition of the Cape Cod Times. Well, friends, our headline article here today says this: Environmental impact reports are near the finish. The Sagamore Bridge fieldwork contract bidding process is moving ahead. And there's a beautiful picture of the bridge in better weather. And underneath the picture, it says Geologic-based Norfolk Company has crews on both sides of the Cape Cod Canal taking soil samples as prep work continues with preparations to replace the aging Sagamore Bridge. And here, friends, is the article about the status of the Sagamore Bridge replacement. The state's Cape Cod Bridges replacement plan is moving ahead on several fronts: environmental, contract bidding, and field work in preparation for the Sagamore Bridge replacement. The State Department of Transportation has filed the final environmental impact statement in compliance with the Massachusetts Environmental Policy Act for the Bridges project, the State Transportation Department announced on March 13th. We are pleased to reach this important permitting milestone, Transportation Undersecretary and Highway Administrator Jonathan Gulliver said in a press release. The Healy-Driscoll administration is advancing environmental permitting, foundation load testing, surveying, and other critical steps needed to deliver this project. Our focus is on moving the work forward as efficiently and as possible for the residents, businesses, and visitors who rely on these bridges every day. The environmental report is now available in the March 11th, 2026 edition of the MEPA, Environmental and Monitor. The MEPA office will accept public comments through April the 10th and expects to issue a certificate on the final report on April the 17th. Advisory Committee meeting on March 10th that the state is developing the final environmental impact statement for the National Environmental Policy Act and draft has been sent to the Federal Highway Administration. A final signature on the statement is expected in June. The required state and national reports are intended to be a complete analysis of how the new Sagamore and Bourne Bridges construction will affect the air, noise, water, coastal islands, marine life, rights of way, and historical assets. So, how to comment if you're interested in the Cape Cod Bridge Environmental Compact Report. Public comments on the Environmental Impact Report can be submitted through the MEPA Public Comment Portal or by email to Nicholas.Moreno, that's Nicholas dot capital MORENO, Nicholas.Moreno at mass.gov, or via the U.S. mail to the Secretary of Energy and Environmental Affairs, Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs in Boston, Massachusetts. So the process to choose the Cape Bridge contractors is underway. In another update, at the Bridges Advisory Committee meeting of community stakeholders at Massachusetts Maritime Academy, Bridges project consultant David Anderson reported that a preliminary and final design of the Sagamore Bridge is being completed and the procurement process of choosing contractors is beginning. We can start construction sooner while designing the bridge, he said, with the design and build process that is being used for the project. Roadway and structural design has already been submitted to the Transportation Department, and the engineering concept will be submitted next, he said. We are close to releasing letters of interest, Anderson said, to potential project bidders. The interest letters will ask for qualifications, and the potential bidders will be reviewed and narrowed down to a reasonable number by this coming May, and proposals will be looked at in September, he said. The Enbridge, that's Enbridge company, that is working on relocating natural gas lines under the bridge is projecting it's ahead of schedule and will provide an update on April 28th, so said Mr. Anderson. Anderson also reported a lot of progress on the bridge right-of-way property acquisitions. 13 homes near the Sagamore Bridge will be taken under the eminent domain law for this project, and several deeds have been transferred already to the Commonwealth. Field work is currently underway in preparation for the Sagamore Bridge, the first to be replaced, Anderson announced, with the Bourne to be following at a later date. He described the work on the south and north sides of the bridge that includes tree removal and foundation load tests. The testing should be done in October, but testing will not be done for the Bourne Bridge now, he said, at a later date. Bourne Select Board member Peter Meyer asked at the meeting if the load testing will have any impact on local roads. Mr. Anderson said it should not be a huge or disruptive impact, but noted that some of the heaviest work will be done near the former Christmas tree shop on the south side of the Sagamore Bridge. All right, there you have it, folks, a little bit of the update on the Sagamore Bridge replacement, which is the first of the two bridges servicing the Cape that will be replaced. So hopefully this project will continue to move forward in a rather rapid manner. This next article, again on page 1, has a headline of this: Final Vineyard Wind 1 blades are installed. This is by Rachel Devaney of the Cape Cod Times Network. And here is the article. After a reprieve from the U.S. Department of Interior suspension in December, the offshore wind company Vineyard Wind 1 installed the last of its turbine blades this past Friday. With the installation of the final blades, Vineyard Wind completed its offshore construction program. Vineyard Wind continues to deliver power to the New England grid, said Vineyard Wind spokesperson Craig Gilvarg in an email to the Times on Monday. The last shipment of turbine blades for the $4.5 billion Vineyard Wind 1 project headed to the site south of Martha's Vineyard last week. The project had been in danger of stalling when the Trump administration in late December issued a stop work order. U.S. District Court for the District of Massachusetts granted the company a preliminary injunction on January 27th, thus allowing Vineyard Wind to restart full construction activities in its lease area, which is about 12 miles south of Martha's Vineyard, with a broader legal challenge while it moves through the court system. The turbines left New Bedford Marine Commerce Terminal on March the 10th. So the ruling blocked a suspension order issued by the Department of the Interior. A January 27th ruling blocked a December 22nd suspension order issued by the U.S. Department of Interior Bureau of Ocean Energy Management to 5 major East Coast offshore wind projects, which included Vineyard Wind. According to documents filed with the U.S. District Court in January, at the time the project was 95% finished, with 61 of the 62 turbines installed and 44 turbines already commissioned to produce 572 megawatts of the project's 800 megawatt capacity. The company had been looking to finish the project, which began construction in 2022, by March 31st of this year. So what was the Vineyard 1 filing of a lawsuit all about? Well, Vineyard Wind 1 filed a lawsuit and a request for an injunction on January 15th after BOEM ordered construction paused for at least 90 days while the agency reviewed and the other 4 projects against a classified national security assessment the Department of War submitted in November. The order also affected Revolution Wind, Empire Wind, Sunrise Wind, and Coastal Virginia Offshore Wind Commercial. All 5 were granted injunctions. Revolution Wind, Empire Wind, and Coastal Virginia all received injunctions from the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia earlier in January. Sunshine Winds was approved February the 2nd in the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia. The Department of the Interior had announced it was suspending construction of the 5 projects in December of 2025, quote, due to national security risks, end quote, identified by the Department of War, typically the Department of Defense, in recently completed classified efforts. The pause will give the Department of Interior, along with the Department of War and other relevant government agencies, time to work with leaseholders and state partners to assess the possibility of mitigating the national security risk posed by these projects. Unclassified reports from the U.S. government have found that the movement of massive turbine blades and the highly reflective towers create radar interference called clutter, according to a press release issued by the Department of the Interior in December of 2025. The courts found that the government did not provide sufficient proof of imminent national security risks. According to legal filings, the federal government can shut down offshore projects for the national security reasons, but only temporarily when there is a change in NORAD's readiness status. All right. That's the end of that particular article, and we still have yet another article of local interest here on page 1, so we'll get to that now. This is a rather morose article in that it references the death of a 22-year-old kayaker here on the Cape. The headline of this article, it says, 22-year-old kayaker dies following a 2-hour search. This is by Zane Razak of the Cape Cod Times Network. Here, friends, is that article. A 22-year-old man died after he was pulled from the water in Wellfleet following a 2-hour search on Saturday evening, according to the fire department. Wellfleet Emergency Services learned about a kayaker in distress shortly after 6 p.m. Saturday. A blue kayak had overturned and the person aboard was wearing a green life jacket drifting in the current, according to authorities. The Wellfleet Harbor Master deployed 2 boats staffed with Harbor Master and Fire Department personnel, and the Eastham Harbor Master also sent a boat to help with the search. Wellfleet police officers searched the shoreline, helped by the Wellfleet Shellfish Warden. The Eastham Police and the Truro Fire Department also aided in the search by using drones, while the U.S. Coast Guard sent a helicopter to search the surrounding waters. The kayaker was found in the water at 8:02 p.m. by one of the harbor master's boats and was brought to shore. Life-saving measures were performed as the man was taken to the town pier before he was taken to Cape Cod Hospital in very critical condition. The man was later pronounced dead at the hospital, and his identity is being held pending notification of family members. The Wellfleet Fire Department thanked all assisting agencies for their efforts during the search. Sadly, that concludes that article. The kayaker who did pass away has since been identified as Nicholas Alvernaz, Alvernaz, 22-year-old man from Cotuit. Here, friends, is another article of local interest found on page 2. Surprisingly, it says Mass Department of Transportation restarts the process of finding service plaza operator. This is from the Worcester Telegram. Here's the article. The Massachusetts Department of Transportation announced Friday, March the 13th, that it will be seeking new proposals for the refurbishment of 18 service travel plazas on the Mass Turnpike and other major highways through a revamped process following the collapse of its prior effort last year. This time around, the agency proposes to rebid the project through the creation of a public-private partnership commission that it says will bring the procurement process into the open while ensuring that proper oversight is granted. MassDOT expects to release the parameters of the project in the summer. Governor Maura Healey is expected to appoint 4 of the commissioners, with the Senate President, the House Speaker, and the State Treasurer each appointing 1 additional commissioner, respectively. MassDOT said the commission will allow the state to combine strong public oversight with private sector investment and operational expertise to modernize the plazas more quickly and efficiently, and could be achieved through traditional delivery methods. The refurbished plazas will be divided into 3 particular groups to attract a wide range of developers and more competitive proposals. Bidders will be able to submit proposals for 1, 2, or all 3 groups. In the past, a request for a proposal, Mashpee DOT sought to award the contract to the bidder, which would work with partners to oversee the massive reconstruction and rehabilitation process and also operate the plazas through a 35-year period. Service plazas and the services they provide enhance safety for travelers from near and far, offering food, fuel, a place to rest, and other amenities, said Philip Eng, the state's interim transportation secretary, in a press release recently submitted. MassDOT is committed to utilizing the best procurement method that we can to best facilitate the robust interest and the competition to deliver facilities that can best serve the needs of the public. MassDOT has scheduled an Industry Day March 25th to discuss the upcoming procurement with prospective operators, designers, builders, and consultants, along with various contractors. The public can also participate through May the 3rd by filling out an online survey that asks how they feel about the current plazas and what services are most important to them. The public deserves and expects a top-notch customer experience, and this best value procurement will make that a priority, said Mr. Eng. So why did the prior process fail? Well, the massive project to refurbish the travel plazas stalled this past September. The winning bidder, Irish company Applegreen, walked away from negotiations before a contract was finalized amid controversy and a public outcry, stirred in part by the runner-up, Global Partners of Waltham. Legislative hearings and demands for an investigation led to an inquiry by the state office of the Inspector General. In a letter detailing his findings, Inspector General Jeffrey Shapiro found there was no fatal flaw in the procurement process. However, Shapiro wrote, a number of breaches led to the appearance of collusion. These breaches by themselves were not sufficient to tank the process. Together, they tainted the procurement process, so said Shapiro. The letter offers suggestions for MassDOT, including that it follow its own policies as it prepares a new request for proposals. In an emailed statement, Global Partners indicated that it will once again participate in the request for proposals. Global Partners remains confident that we are the most qualified bidder to deliver a service plaza program that provides strong long-term financial value for Massachusetts taxpayers while advancing the priorities and values of the Commonwealth, said Max Slifka, the company's senior vice president. In retail and fueling operations and track record of investing in modern guest-focused facilities uniquely positions us, so said the corporation, to deliver a reliable, innovative, and sustaining service plaza system. So, why do service plazas really need to be overhauled? Well, MassDOT points out that many of the service plazas are decades old and have reached the end of their useful lives. In its initial request for proposals, the agency sought a fresher approach, new structures that reflects the state regional differences, showcase Massachusetts specific merchandise, and offer travelers, both commuters and long distance voyagers, the best experience possible. And importantly, the plaza operator should optimize rent revenues and profit shares and offer convenient fueling options as the use of electric vehicles increases. All right, there you have it, friends. More bids now being put out to various contractors and interested corporations to improve the various facilities, the traveler stops on the Mass Turnpike. I'm sure we'll hear more about that in the near future. All right, friends, we're now turning to page 3, the Cape and Islands page of today's Tuesday version of the Cape Cod Times for September the 17th, St. Patrick's Day. This article is headlined by this: PFLAG, PFLAG, hosts the author of American Teenager, a book about trans kids. This article is by Rachel Devaney of the Cape Cod Times Network and features a picture here before the article of PFLAG Cape Cod President Joe Lima, that's Lima, at his home in Osterville on March the 13th. PFLAG, or Parents, Families, and Friends of Lesbians and Gays, will host author and activist Nico Lang for a book reading from 7 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. on March 26th at the Hyannis Arts Hall. Lang will also appear at 6:30 p.m. on March 31st at Unitarian Universalist Meeting House of Provincetown. Here's the article. To prepare for their first book, author Nico Lang spent 2 weeks at a time with 7 American households that included a transgender child in the family. For Lang, an LGBTQ plus activist, the journey highlighted the beautifully mundane and profoundly normal lives of transgender children. There's so much fear-mongering about transgender children, said Lang during a phone interview with The Times. They are human beings just like anyone and everyone else. American Teenager, How Trans Kids Are Surviving Hate and Finding Joy in a Turbulent Era. That book documents the lives of 8 teens ranging from states across the nation: South Dakota, Alabama, West Virginia, Texas, Florida, and California. During Lang's visits, they recorded the kids' daily triumphs, struggles, and messages of love with the world. The book was about planting seeds for the future and hoping those seeds will grow into something beautiful, said Lang. It was also about showing that these teen voices do in fact matter. Lang will be on Cape Cod at the end of the month to mark the Transgender Day of Visibility for book readings in Hyannis on March 26th and Provincetown on March 31st. So children are resilient, said Lang. Throughout their time with the families, Lang was inspired by all the teenagers. But Jack, 19 years old at the time the book was written, had been through more than most, said the author Lang. Jack's mother is a domestic violence survivor and was also unhoused for 3 months. Jack's sibling, Augie, was also being bullied at school. Through it all, Jack was also being detransitioned by the state of Florida, said Lang. In 2023, the state of Florida banned health care for transgender people under the age of 18, according to USA Today reporting. The state was also the first to pass a law restricting access to gender-affirming health care for transgender adults, Jack said, and Lang said as well, and this was horrified by the lawsuits and the laws and policies that were being passed. But she had to make the best of it. She didn't have a choice, said Lang. She would just sit in her room in the dark, worry about catching a glimpse of herself in the mirror. She watched this body that she had fought so hard for begin to slip away. Like she had been through a nuclear blast is a statement leading us into the next paragraph. When Lang finally met Jack in person, they, the pronoun they used now, said she radiated trauma. Like she had been through a nuclear blast. You could feel that energy across the room. It was so palpable. Several years after Jack's family, several years after Lang's time with Jack's family, sorry about that, folks, the two reconnected. She had moved away from Florida and is enrolled in college. She's thoughtful, funny, and wise, and has an eclectic taste in books and music. All of these kids are trying to figure out how to make this all work, and it just shouldn't be this hard, said Lang, the author. Book reading set for Hyannis and Provincetown. In honor of Transgender Day of Visibility, annually held on March 31st, the group Parents, Families, and Friends of Lesbians and Gays, with the acronym PFLAG, PFLAG, Cape Cod will host Lang for a book reading from 7 to 8:30 p.m. on Thursday the 26th at the Hyannis Arts Hall. Lang, the author, will also appear at 6:30 p.m. on Tuesday, March 31st at the Unitarian Universalist Meeting House of Provincetown. So bringing Lang and their book to the Cape, they're meaning the kids he spoke with in interviews, said PFLAG President Joe Lima, is a way for the nonprofit to continue to provide support, education, and advocacy for the LGBTQ plus people and the trans community. So why is Lang's book important? That statement leads us into the next paragraph. Lang's appearance on the Cape, said Lima, is an opportunity for Cape Codders to recognize that they do have transgender neighbors, friends, and co-workers. Familiarity with the local LGBTQ plus community, he said, can help people be more empathetic towards transgender people and the experiences they encounter. Nico can help people open their minds and hearts to their journey, their struggles, and to eventual acceptance, said Lima. PFLAG also holds a Transgender Day of Remembrance every November 20th, a solemn day that honors the memory of transgender and gender-diverse people who've lost their lives to suicide or anti-transgender violence, he said. But Transgender Day of Visibility is an opportunity for the community to celebrate the LGBTQ plus community and the transgender community as well. It's a more positive tone where we can gather to honor people's accomplishments and their achievements, Lima said. That's an important thing to do when there's been an incredible amount of anti-trans backlash. So we have more power than we think, said Lang. So when Lang first approached different publishing houses about American Teenager, the book, publishers said they wanted transgender stories about families rejecting their children. Lang was told over and over that a positive book about transgender children just would not sell. Stories of trauma can be important, said Lang, but for the purposes of this book, they said they were looking for valuable stories that didn't feel painful. I didn't want the book to be another thing these children were fighting, said the author, Mr. Lang. The book was finally published by Abrams Press in October of 2024, and Lang has been featured at roughly 176 book events across the country. The book has also become a national bestseller, according to Abrams Press website, and a 2025 Stonewall Book Award honoree. Since Lang said they have been trying to take the books to as many communities as possible. I'm there with my homemade signs, even. And I'm fighting back just like everyone else is, Lang said. We have more power than what we think, and keeping that energy going is certainly going to be worth it. All right, that concludes that article, friends, about the author, Mr. Lang, and his book about transgender youngsters. All right, we are moving on. At this point, friends, let's take a look at the various lotteries here in the state and across the nation, looking first at the two big ones. The Mega Millions jackpot has a lottery, or pot, should I say, of $60 million. That next drawing will be held today at 11 p.m. The Powerball lottery has a jackpot of $101 million. The next drawing will be held tomorrow at 11 p.m. Looking further at the Powerball lottery and giving you the winning numbers from yesterday, the 16th of February, which was Monday. So if you want to check your tickets, those numbers were 7, 10, 20, 47, 52, and a Powerball of 20. Again, Powerball from yesterday, Monday, the 16th. 7, 10, 20, 47, 52, and a Powerball of 20. Looking now at the most recent winning numbers for the Mega Millions, the winning numbers for this past Friday, the 13th of March, were these: 6, 19, 36, 40, and 55, with a Mega Ball of 9. 6, 19, 36, 40, 55, and a Mega Ball of 9. All right, we'll take a look at some other lottery games here in Massachusetts. First, the numbers game. The drawings were held yesterday for the midday drawing and the evening drawing. Yesterday's midday winning numbers were these: 3386, 3386 for the midday numbers drawing, and the evening drawing were these: 8092, 8092. Mass Cash. The next drawing is today at 2 o'clock. Yesterday's midday drawing, here are those winning numbers: 13, 23, 24, 25, and 31. Midday numbers for Mass Cash were these: 13, 23, 24, 25, and 31. Evening numbers for Mass Cash were these from yesterday: 9, 16, 27, 28, and 32. 9, 16, 27, 28, and 32 for yesterday's evening Mass Cash draw. There's a new game in town. It's called Millionaire for Life, meaning that you get $1 million a year for life if you should win. Here are those numbers: 2, 16, 30, 41, 49, and a million for life ball of 4. 2, 16, 30, 41, 49, and a millionaire for life ball of 4 in that new Millionaire for Life drawing. Mega Bucks. If you played this game, the next drawing is tomorrow at 9 o'clock. Numbers drawn yesterday as winning numbers were these: 4, 11, 30, 31, 40, and 44. 4, 11, 30, 31, 40, and 44. All right, friends, that's a quick look at the lotteries, various jackpots, and the various winning numbers most recently. All right, we're now moving on. Obviously, Trump's war with Iran has taken many of the headlines in recent weeks in newscasts and in newspapers. This next article says Fed weighs Iran war's economic impact. Forecasters are expecting interest rates to stay the same. This is a USA Today article, and here it is. Forecasters widely expect the Federal Reserve to keep its benchmark interest rate unchanged when it concludes its two-day meeting on March the 18th, as policymakers weigh the economic impact of the ongoing war with Iran. In addition to the United States going to war, much has happened since the Federal Open Market Committee held the rate steady at a target range of 3.5 to 3.75% at its last meeting in January, following three cuts late last year. January and February jobs reports from the Bureau of Labor Statistics sent mixed signals about the labor market, with January showing growth above expectations and February seeing significant numbers of jobs lost. CPI inflation has ticked down since policymakers last met, but economists want to see March data, as the latest figures do not reflect the recent surge in the cost of oil. Rising oil prices could ripple through supply chains and push other prices higher as well. Meanwhile, the Bureau of Economic Analysis revised its estimate of GDP growth in the fourth quarter of 2025 to 0.7%, down from its initial 1.4% estimate and down from 4.4% in the previous quarter. Now, stagflation fears are back on the table. Wells Fargo economists in a note March 12th called high inflation and a weaker labor market the committee's worst nightmare, as it juggles its dual mandate to keep prices stable and unemployment rates low. The Bureau of Labor Statistics reported the U.S. economy added a now downwardly revised 126,000 jobs in January, only to lose an estimated 92,000 jobs in February. The unemployment rate dropped from 4.4% in December to 4.3% in January, but returned to 4.4% in February and may well go up once March figures are in. All right, that concludes that article. Well, we're beyond our halfway point, and typically it's now when we take a look at the obituaries. So we will do that now, and we do have three for today. The first one being Jeremy Leonard Gobeil, G-O-B-E-I-L. Has a date line of born, and here it is. Jeremy Leonard Gobeil, a devoted husband, father, brother, and friend, whose love for family, the Cape Cod coastline, and whose kindness and generosity were central to his character, he passed away Thursday, the 12th of March, surrounded by those who loved him. Jeremy grew up in Barnstable, Mass., where he distinguished himself as a BHS, that's Barnstable High School Hall of Fame, standout athlete. His talents and determination earned him a football scholarship to Northeastern University, where he became a record-setting player and served as captain of the 1993 Huskies football team. During his time at Northeastern, he formed, maintained, and cherished lifelong friendships. In addition to his bachelor's degree from Northeastern, Jeremy earned a bachelor's degree from Fitchburg State University. Jeremy began his professional career at the Home for Little Wanderers, where he provided mentorship, kindness, and rebuilding the lives of children and families suffering various traumas. He served for many years as a school administrator and principal in the Plymouth and Middleborough school districts. He was deeply committed to the students, families, and the staff he served, and he took great pride in fostering strong relationships within the school community. Known for his steady leadership, sense of humor, and genuine care for others, he built a close-knit team and was respected and admired by colleagues, students, and families alike. A celebration of life for Jeremy will be held on Saturday, March 21st at 10 a.m. at the Swift Memorial United Methodist Church in Sagamore Beach. In lieu of flowers, the family asked that contributions be made to the Blade Leavenworth Memorial Scholarship Fund. The fund, created in memory of a born student who passed away at a young age, benefited Grace, Grady, and Cooper, his children. Details about the fund will be provided at a later date. All right, friends, that's the obituary of Mr. Jeremy Leonard Gobeil, Gobeil. Our next obituary today is that of Peter Joseph Olsta, O-L-S-T-A, has a dateline of Eastham, and here it is. Peter J. Olsta, age 78, of Eastham and Glenmont, New York, died Thursday, the 12th of March. He was born in 1947 on November 3rd in Webster, Massachusetts. He graduated from Bartlett High School and received his bachelor's degree from Lowell Tech and his master's from RPI. Peter was a business executive in the plastics manufacturing industry, spending his career at DuPont, Albany International, Krellin Plastics, Sonico Plastics, and Pittsfield Plastics. More recently, Peter spent his time volunteering for Nauset Neighbors on Cape Cod, where he made many new friends while driving seniors to medical appointments. He was just awarded Volunteer of this Year this past week. Peter loved bringing people together, especially at his home on Cape Cod. He loved small world stories and connected with people wherever he went. Peter was a gifted athlete, having success in football, basketball, and most significantly, baseball. He was a proud inductee of the Hall of Fame at both Bartlett High School and at UMass Lowell. Peter touched the lives of many, often filling the role of Dad and Poppy to an extended circle of family and friends. He enjoyed exploring low tide with his grandkids, watching sunsets from the deck, enjoying a nice meal, and running the family football pool. Peter was a devoted fan of all New England sports teams. Calling hours will be Thursday, March 19th from 5 to 8 p.m. at Bartell Funeral Home, 33 Schofield Avenue in Dudley, Mass. In lieu of flowers, donations to the Nauset Neighbors, Alzheimer's Association, or the charity of your choice would be greatly appreciated. A Mass of Christian burial will be held at 10 a.m. on Friday, the 20th of March, at Sacred Heart of Jesus Church, 16 Main Street in Webster, Mass., followed by a luncheon at Point Breeze, 114 Point Breeze Road, again in Webster, Mass. That's the obituary, friends, of Peter Joseph Olsta, O-L-S-T-A, of Eastham. All right. Moving on. Jumping now to the lighter side of the paper, we'll go to the Ask Carolyn column, where if you've joined us regularly, you know this is a column wherein writers from the outside world of the newspaper write into Carolyn Hax and seek her opinion, resolution, omniscience, whatever you want to call it, in addressing their particular problems. The headline here says, underemployed partners' ideas ought to give a near retiree pause. Well, let's see what this is about. Here's the letter. Dear Carolyn, my partner and I have been together a few years. We're both older. I'm eyeing retirement, although I have a child to get through college, but I'm financially stable, while he is minimally employed with no savings. I am covering his bills sometimes, but that's about it. He'd love to move in with me, but I can't bring myself to do this unless and until he can help financially with the household bills. He contributes in many, many other ways, largely because he has more free time than I do. And he is a kind, loving, and decent partner. So why am I placing so much importance on money? Well, it's because I feel like we are the ant and the grasshopper. He's not lazy, but he's quite smart and has calculated how working a soul-crushing job doesn't make mathematical sense. Philosophically, I agree with him and even value his unconventional way of thinking in many areas, but high-minded rhetoric does not pay the bills. Sometimes you just have to suck it up and get your butt to work. Am I wrong about that? Signed, The Ant. Well, here's her response, Carolyn's response. Dear Aunt, I hope you've got room because we're all moving in. Is your hesitation really about placing so much importance on money, though? Or is it that you've made the connection? He protects his own soul from the crusher, but has no qualms with sharing the benefits you have accrued so carefully from crushing yours. I'd sure struggle with that. If he regretted his youthful stupidity, midlife arrogance, grasshopping, even a little bit, then his enthusiasm to move in with you might be considered differently. Or alternately, if he were respectful of your sacrifices and your equally precious soul, enough, that is, to offer ways to safeguard what you built with your trade-offs, to enhance it, even, be it through employment, effort, or ingenuity. All right, I guess Carolyn doesn't think that's too good of an idea to move in with the so-called aunt in this relationship. As always, that article's a bit confusing, but hopefully we all get the idea. Here's another article about the war in Iran. It says, as a headline, key U.S. allies refuse to help. They reject Trump's call for State of Hormuz warship escorts. And here's the article. It's a Reuters news agency article. Several U.S. allies rebuffed Donald Trump's call on March 17th to send warships to escort tankers through the Strait of Hormuz, drawing criticism from the U.S. president, who accused Western partners of ingratitude after decades of support. The U.S.-Israeli war on Iran is in its third week, still with no end in sight. The critical Strait of Hormuz, through which 20% of the world's oil and liquefied natural gas flow, and it remains largely closed off, raising energy prices and fears of inflation. The conflict has already imposed economic costs on U.S., the allies who were not consulted before the airstrikes on Iran, and who have endured months of harsh criticism and bellicose threats from Trump since he returned to office. A number of U.S. partners, including Germany, Spain, and Italy, said they had no immediate plans to send ships to help reopen the strategic waterway, which Iran has effectively shut down with drones and naval mines. We lack the mandate from the United Nations, the European Union, or NATO required under the Basic Law, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz said in Berlin, adding that Washington and Israel had not consulted Germany before launching the war. Trump, speaking at a White House event in Washington, said many countries had told him they were prepared to help, but voiced frustration with long-standing allies. Some are very enthusiastic about it, and some aren't, he said, without offering any specifics as usual. Some are countries that we've helped for many, many years. We've protected them from horrible outside sources, and they weren't that enthusiastic. And the level of enthusiasm matters to me. Israel said on March 16th it had drawn up detailed plans for at least 3 more weeks of war as it pounded sites across Iran overnight, while Iranian drone attacks temporarily shut Dubai airport and hit a key oil facility in the United Arab Emirates. Israel troops pushed into new parts of southern Lebanon, part of an expanding operation going after Hezbollah, had fired rockets at Israel in retaliation for the killing of Iran's supreme leader. In a joint statement, Canada, France, Germany, Italy, and Britain warned that significant Israeli ground defenses would have devastating humanitarian consequences and could lead to a protracted conflict, and that such an operation must be averted. Israel has said it wants to weaken Iran's capacity to threaten it, striking ballistic missiles infrastructure, nuclear facilities, and the security apparatus, and said it still has thousands of targets to hit. We want to make sure that they are as weak as possible, this regime, and that we degrade all their capabilities, all parts, and all wings of their security establishment, an Israeli military spokesman said. Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps said it would target U.S. industrial facilities in the Middle East and urged people living near such U.S.-owned plants to leave. Well, for those of you who've been waiting for March Madness as we go to sports, we can tell you some of the top seeds and some of the more interesting games which start in earnest this coming weekend or on Thursday. There are, as most of you know, 4 regions of play. In the South region, the number 1 seed is the University of Florida, defending national champion. In the Eastern region, the top seed is Duke. In the West region, the top seed are the Arizona Wildcats. And in the Midwest region, the University of Michigan is the number 1 seed in spite of losing this past weekend the conference championship to Purdue. The various 8 and 9 seeds are always a top game to look at, and this year is no exception. Same is true for the 5-9 seeds. An interesting first-round game in the West will feature Wisconsin as a 5 seed facing a vaunted Utah State team. In the Midwest region, the 5 versus 9 seed features Texas Tech as the 5 versus St. Louis as the 9. Another intriguing 5-9 matchup happens in the South, where Iowa, as the number 9 seed, faces Vanderbilt, the 5 seed. And in the East, another 5-9 matchup featuring St. John's at 5 going against Texas Christian at 9. All very intriguing first-round matchups of 5 versus 9 seed. For those of you seeking local interest or regional interest, know that Connecticut, the Yukon Huskies, are the number 2 seed in the East Division, and they open play this weekend versus the University of Central Florida. Even though they are a number 2 seed in their region, they are not nearly as strong as they have been the most recent 2 years. Well, friends, at this point, we've got just a few minutes till we close our broadcast, so I thought I'd end with a reference to St. Patrick's Day. And for those of you who don't know, we just kind of accept it as a name, St. Patrick's Day is a celebration of, you guessed it, Ireland's patron saint, who lived during the 5th century and who is known for bringing Christianity to the nation. The holiday is celebrated on March 17th, which was the anniversary of the patron saint's death. But history aside, people from all backgrounds get in the spirit by partaking in popular traditions like eating traditional Irish food, decorating with shamrocks and wearing green, throwing parties, and generally just having a great time, especially drinking on St. Patrick's Day, often green. So as we end today's broadcast, let's take a look at some Irish quotes and see if they have meaning for you. Here's one. A good friend is like a 4-leaf clover, hard to find and lucky to have. And how about this Irish blessing? May your pockets be heavy and your heart be light. May good luck pursue you each morning and night. Since the old common phrase, the luck of the Irish, so many of these phrases and sayings do mention luck, this next one not excluded. It says, I have noticed that timing and luck sometimes line up in such a way that you can actually catch a break. And so, as we close on this St. Patrick's Day, may the luck of the Irish be with you in happiness and health. This is Doug Fagan, your volunteer reader, telling you that it's been my pleasure and privilege to read for you this Tuesday, the 17th of March, St. Patrick's Day of the Cape Cod Times for this particular day. And letting you know that I'm looking forward to reading for you again next Tuesday after we celebrate today, St. Patrick's Day. So until then, be happy, be healthy, and friends, so long for now.